Thank you very much, Mr. Pfluger. You're just tormenting me. You strike me out every year in our annual game, but here I go. I'm really not an athlete. I just try to play one once a year. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing, and also Member Schakowsky, Ranking Member Schakowsky, for having this hearing as well. It's very, very important that we get this discussion out in front of the public, who I think is just very, very unaware of what's really going on out there, not only with our athletes, but with the NCAA and all the players and participants involved. It's an important topic, and I appreciate this opportunity, and thank you for allowing me to wave on to this discussion. I have an article here on the origins of the NCAA that I'd like to enter for the record, and it's titled, "Why Does the NCAA Exist?" And it talks about how President Roosevelt and some good old boys decided to create the NCAA just over 100 years ago because they loved watching college football. The NCAA's student-athlete model is collapsing because it's built on the faulty premise that college athletes are amateurs. The NCAA wants us to believe that March Madness is no more than a similar pickup basketball games at the local rec center and the NBA Finals, or that the college football playoff is more like a recreational flag football tournament than the NFL playoffs. These notions are absolutely and totally absurd. The reality is that college sports generated $16.6 billion, that's with a B, in tax-free revenue for the 2021 and 2022 school year, making it the second highest revenue-generating league in the world, right behind the NFL in the United States. Mr. Griffin, are athletes competing in the top rungs of collegiate athletics truly amateurs?
Only by payment status, but as far as how we operate, time, effort, and value created, we operate as employees.
Thank you. Professor Jackson, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I'd just like to point out that we've been having a conversation about college sports in a vacuum, and many of these sports are global sports, and the world abandoned amateurism in the 80s, and the sole reason the United States did not was college football. And college football policy, as a result of that, has been the policy for all of the other sports. And so the kind of deleterious consequences of all of this have been playing out. I really appreciated Mr. Vesey's comments earlier about this. So we're tripping ourselves. I mean, we're just confused by the presence or absence of money. And I think we need to get to work. I mean, Chase Griffin shouldn't have to pay for everyone else's experiences. I appreciate that he takes great pride in that, but that's a professional sport.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And in 2022, Division I universities spent 21% of their revenue from athletic activities on facilities and equipment, 20% on coaches' compensation, 18% on compensation for support and administrative staff, 11% on game expenses and travel, and 14% on other expenses. Only 15% of all operating expenses were allocated to athletically related student aid, and a whopping 1% was spent on medical expenses for college athletes at that level. Further, I find it frustrating that under this discussion, draft college athletes would be required to report their NIL-based income, while the NCAA executives, some of them making millions of dollars a year, are not held to the same requirement to disclose their income when they're part of the same ecosystem that you, Mr. Griffin, are part of. Mr. Griffin, is the NCAA and its member universities putting college athletes or their own bottom line first?
I think that Governor Baker introduced a good starting out point and a show of good faith with the proposal. It acknowledged that college athletes, especially in revenue-generating sports, should be paid, should be compensated, and that there's a model that can do this in a way that also reconciles itself with Title IX. And I think by looking at a new model, it also looks at how we approach Title IX. We were talking about how the influx of international college athletes may pose issues for domestic college athletes. I think we look at our Olympic sports and talk to our donors, talk to those, and truly put efforts into fundraising ahead of the LA Olympics coming in 2028.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, would you be in support of the NCAA executives reporting their income as NCAA executives, just like the bill would require that NIL is actually reported on behalf of athletes?
Just one correction, Congressman. I don't think the proposal would have individual athlete compensation. I think it's de-identified. The point behind it was to create a mechanism that would give all student athletes the ability to see what the market looks like generally around what people are making under NIL. Currently, they can't tell.
Okay, and to the question of the
Which I think is
NCAA?
important. The answer to your second question is the NCAA is a 501c3 and files an annual report every single year that lists the salaries of all of its senior executives. That's publicly available information.
Good, I'll lift that up and then report it to the committee. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I yield back.